where I think AI is going to have a real big impact, and we're seeing this in more general software products, so things outside of the recruitment industry, is the ability to just write or say what you want to see, and the computer can interpret it using AI.
Welcome to the Tech Savvy Recruiter, the podcast for recruitment and staffing agency owners keen to explore the tech innovations reshaping our industry. I'm Andrew Roger from recMate.
And I'm Belinda from Recruitment Garage, and together we're your hosts, bringing you a stellar lineup of tech experts ready to help you understand and, more importantly, benefit from the increasing array of tech available to you today.
Today we have the privilege of exploring the intersection of technology, recruitment and gamification with a very special guest, Derry Holt, co-founder and CEO of OneUp Sales. OneUp Sales is at the forefront of revolutionising the recruitment industry, leveraging gamification and data analytics to make the hiring process more engaging, efficient and effective. In today's episode, we'll cover the story behind OneUp Sales, the intersection of gamification into recruitment, and how AI is set to transform the future of recruitment analytics. We'll also get personal insights from Derry on his entrepreneurial journey and his vision for the future of hiring and recruitment. Welcome, Derry, to the Tech Savvy Recruiter podcast, and we hope you have a great day. First of all, can we just have a bit of background around who you are and what your business does, Derry?
Yeah, of course you can. Really, big thank you first and foremost for having me on as well, and thanks, Darren, for the introduction. So yeah, as you said, my name's Derry. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called OneUp Sales, based here in the UK, the other side of the world. To you guys, it's a bit darker outside than I imagine it is over down in Australia right now, but here we stand. We basically are a gamification and performance management company, really helping companies to both understand the data inside of their business and then use that to drive better results inside of it. So really by taking data out of things like your CRM, your calling solution, and then using that to run, it could be team-based competitions, it could be internal competitive ones, it could even be just popping up a celebration on the TV when someone closes a deal inside of your office. Anything along those lines to really get the juices flowing and get competitive spirit being driven amongst people to, as said, ultimately get better results out of your team.
Yeah, amazing. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I love gamification. So, Derry, so every successful venture, it starts with a story or a problem that needs solving. Would you just share a little about the moment of sort of inspiration that led you to start your company, specialising in what you're doing in recruitment data? Let me just start that again. Hang on.
It's all right.
So, Derry, every successful venture starts with a story or a problem that needs solving. Would you mind sharing the moment of inspiration that led you to start your company specialising in recruitment data gamification? That's really cool. And additionally, how do you envisage that your company will change the landscape of recruitment in the next 5 years?
I always
no pressure.
Not at all, but I love being asked this question overall. That first one, especially. What's the problem that you found when you really came up with this? And back in October, I did a talk at a software conference in Dublin, an event called SaaStock, and the title of my talk was "How Not to Build a Software Company." Because I did everything back to front. We came up with an idea that we thought sounded really cool, didn't bother validating at all that it was something people would be interested in, that it solved a real problem. Me and my co-founder basically one night had this idea where he'd been working in door-to-door sales. We both then spent time working in the video games industry, hence the Pikachu above my head. And off the back of that, we were like, yeah, you know what? Salespeople are really competitive. They make loads of data. They're really driven. Like, this would be great. We can just use what we know about building games to motivate these people and just set about building something. And that something turned into being able to basically assign points to activities that you do throughout your day as a salesperson or a recruiter, and you then stack up against others in your office on that basis. Fast forward 7-8 years of making a ton of mistakes and learning a ton of things along that journey. We've kind of landed on being what we've really dubbed in a sentence as a sales performance management platform, where it's all these things together, from reporting to gamification to data visualization, whatever it might be, all the tools that you need to really run a sales team as one collective kind of platform rather than trying to spread it out across different places. So definitely not the conventional way of going about building the company. It does mean I probably lost 3 or 4 years along the process and quite a lot of my hairline, but that feels like it's the way that it goes when building a company, right? So that was the real fun journey to get to how we are today. And I think if we look towards the future, where I think we're going is into a really interesting space. And you mentioned AI a little bit earlier on. I think AI in itself seems to be the kind of hot topic at the moment. Obviously, everyone's talking about it. Everyone really wants to know, okay, but how do I actually use it? I can type a few cool prompts into ChatGPT and it tells me some answers better than Google would. Yeah, sure. But how do I actually use it in the day to day? Where I think there's a really interesting intersection with analytics in particular is if you guys think about when you're coming to, I don't know, entering your details on a website or signing up for a platform, whatever it might be, the number one thing that you're greeted by normally is a form, right? You've got to put in your email, you've got to create a passport, give us your name, give us where you live, all these kind of different things. And it's exactly the same when you're interacting with reporting, obviously quite biased in this kind of viewpoint, but you have to select from a bunch of drop downs. Maybe you type in some text to kind of say what it is that you want. And you're basically filling out a form step by step. And the reason why forms were first created to interface with computers is because it was a really good mid-ground between how we converse as humans in sentences and what a computer needs you to give it definitive entry points that it can take and understand and use to run queries on a database behind the scenes. Where I think AI is going to have a real big impact, and we're seeing this in more general software products or things outside of the recruitment industry, is the ability to just write or say what you want to see, and the computer can interpret it using AI. So a great example, and we use this when building out our products just as a general design philosophy, is imagine if someone came to you and said, show me all the jobs that we've got open right now, and I want to see the CVs and interviews we sent against them, including the last time we sent a CV and an interview to them. Now, 2 years ago, you would have imagined that is impossible to get a computer to understand. But thanks to things like AI, it can extract certain parts from what you've just said. It can extrapolate what it believes to be the meaning of that sentence and give you what it believes is the result that you want to see. Now, don't get me wrong, even HubSpot, who are arguably one of the biggest software products in the world, are still getting this quite wrong, I'd say, with their tool called ChatSpot. But I think as these kind of things come on, as these tools developers, we innovate on our side of things for the recruitment industry, that'll just be a real blessing for those that aren't particularly keen about sitting down and filling out 15 different fields to build a report and just being able to say, here's what I want. Can you show it to me? That will be a big change, at least on the AI reporting side of things, in my opinion. And I think that's where we're quite well poised to make a difference over the next couple of years.
Great.
Yes, so much in there, Derry. I've got so many follow-up questions from what you've just gone through. Amazing. We'll get to the AI in a second, but I do want to ask one question around, I guess, the process you guys went through, because transferring recruitment process through to a gamification module is both innovative and also challenging. When you're designing your system and extracting the data, can you maybe discuss a particularly tough challenge you faced whilst that change from raw ones and zero data points into something that's visual? 75+% of us as sales professionals are visual learners. So integrating that into our world as visual learners, can you give some examples, or maybe one particular one that was a pretty tough one when you were looking at that transformation?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge in all of it is recruitment tech itself. Trying to integrate with CRM providers and get data out of their systems. Turns out for many of them, it's not particularly easy to do. It's kind of a gift and a blessing, a gift and a curse in the same stroke, really, for the recruitment industry, in that if we look at more generic software solutions, we see, and when I say generic software solutions, I mean things that companies like we might buy, like software platforms, right, built for software companies. They tend to be quite far ahead. They're at the cutting edge because that's the industry they're built in and they are themselves, right? Whereas recruitment tech, at least from my observation, feels like it's about 8 to 10 years behind that trend. Things that I'm seeing the recruitment industry now adopt, like chatbots, for example, was a thing that was in the software industry probably 10 years ago. And that was the real kind of cutting edge at the time, right? And so in a sense, it's always sort of playing catch up. And that comes with exactly the same way about how you might get data out. The problem with that, when you're looking at how people are using these platforms that feel like they're about 10 years old, is there are then certain expectations that puts on you as a software developer to be able to match up to what they're used to experiencing. One of the biggest things that I think so many companies get wrong when trying to, gamification is a really good example. When you're trying to get companies to make use of your systems through things like gamification, one of the biggest mistakes you can do is to try and be too different to how they used to trying to do things. There's a real common reason why when you're seeing software being built out, they'll copy trends that you see on things like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, tools that people use daily, whether it's the way that you use notification pills, whether it's having a notification button that's represented by a bell. If you change that to like an exclamation mark, that doesn't look like a notifications button to anyone. Or if you change the pill color from being red to blue, little things like that become a little bit, it's not natural for someone to look at that and understand exactly what you mean. Whereas if you copy things that you see in other platforms, that I think definitely really helps. And we in the early days did try and be a little bit too different, I feel. Whereas these days, a lot of our design philosophy is what are people used to seeing in other platforms and how can we make it more familiar? So there's a much more bigger draw to using this from the outset and also understanding it quite intrinsically without having to be trained on, oh, by the way, this weird icon over here means this thing that you're used to in that platform over there. Let's try and align that as best we can to meet expectations.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I've always felt the same where recruitment tech is that sort of 8 to 10 year laggard of the software development world where, SaaS products and SaaS sales, tend to be at that bleeding edge. And I can understand that frustration that must be where you've got these great modules that you'd love to just snap on the side of a recruitment database. But as you said, it's just going to run in complete opposition to what they're used to experiencing and seeing. So I think, it's obviously presents a few challenges there around your development cycle as well, to get things into a format where A, they're going to be useful, B, people want to keep buying your products, and C, they're getting some really good value of, driving change within the organisation.
Yeah, interesting. So Derry, gamification in recruitment can obviously significantly alter how companies assess and not only that, but interact with potential candidates. So in your experience so far, how's the gamification of recruitment data in particular changed the dynamics between employers and candidates?
Ooh, big question there as well. Obviously, we focus more internally, but we do see a lot of gamification applied to the hiring process as well, right? And I think where gamification probably, must have been probably like probably like mid 2000s where we started hearing of this term gamification, about this buzzword that came around. You saw a lot of it coming through in HR and training and like learning and development and training roles, things like that. It was the main reason it was to get someone to go through a whole course. And where I think we've seen little elements of it inside of the recruitment process, specifically for candidates, is, again, coming back to what I said earlier, it's the recognition of the things that people are very, very familiar with. So whether it's making it feel like interacting with a social media platform, whether it's helping them feel like they can share something that they've done off the back of filling out maybe an assessment or filling out a complete application form. I was linked back to, for example, when people first signed up to LinkedIn, or back in the day when it was still in its infancy, you'd have this like all-star meter that would fill up as you filled out more and more of your profile. And in my view, it was a very, very similar sort of thing. If you're able to even just tap into a little bit of motivation, whether it's someone's completionist tendencies, for example, and show, how much have you actually shared here to increase your odds on getting a job. Little things like, people who fill this out have a 2.7 times higher chance of being employed, that sort of thing. That can drive someone to get towards where you want to be. But you have to make sure that you're identifying gamification as the vehicle to get you there rather than the very core essence of what it is you're trying to do. So a lot of recruitment founders will turn around and say things like, we really want to use gamification. And it's like, yeah, but to what end? What is it you want to gamify here? What's the process that you want to go through? And so more using it as something to accelerate the process rather than being the process itself, in my view, is the most important thing.
Yeah. Okay. And I imagine lots of little dopamine hits along the way, those little checks along the way that you can get that little hit.
Look, I grew up playing a lot of video games, and it's exactly that. Every achievement you unlock, every kind of like successful 3-star completion that you get, for example, it's all quite satisfying. And you're absolutely right. It's the small things along the way that keep you engaged rather than just one big, massive far-off reward.
Cool.
Yeah, so, I agree. It's funny. I saw a funny meme the other day. It was celebrating a major milestone birthday. So you're not turning 40, you're reaching level 40 of the game of life, right? So whatever.
So you got to be careful when it starts getting a little bit too like cheesy on the nose. I think you have to be careful with that.
Yeah.
It's I think you're right. I mean, if you can drip feed that dopamine hit throughout the cycle of a recruiter's life, whilst they're working at least, you can get so much more. Like, I mean, I'm looking forward to the day where CRMs have got that built in saying, hey, Andrew, if you send just one more resume to this client, you increase your probability of making a commission check of XYZ dollars.
Absolutely.
By infinitesimal percentile. So we know if you send 3 versus 2 resumes, you're almost guaranteed to make a placement, right? Yeah. So from statistics. And that's down to my statistics, not the mate that's sitting next to me. It's all personalised data from the history of what I put in the system and then the outcome of that.
And I guess it feeds nicely into our shortening memories, our shortening attention spans as well. I think we've got the attention span of we're equal to about a goldfish right now, I think, where it's getting shorter and shorter. So, what I see in gamification is it's quick hits or a progression of quick hits sometimes as well, isn't it?
Derry, a big thing we hear about in like games and like really around gamification in general is the closer you can put the reward to the action, the better. And obviously you don't want to overload by having every single action be rewarded, but it's about how fast you can do an action and get the reaction off the back of it to say, yes, well done, right? It's like training a dog or something, right? So you often have the clickers, like they do something right, immediately you click, they know there's a treat coming. It's to make sure that, again, that recognition of the right action is as close to the thing being done as possible. And I don't want to simplify us down to being like dogs, for example, bless them, we all love them to bits, but yeah, it's basic psychology. There's a reason why it's used across many, many species for that exact purpose.
Yeah, that's very cool. And it breaks things up too, doesn't it? It takes away that sort of monotony to a point that can sometimes be.
Absolutely.
We were talking in your, I guess you're talking a little bit about applications, how gamification can help that process or will be helping that process in the future. Let's face it, there's going to be no doubt that that's going to happen. With gamification and also AI coming into play with the, I guess, not manipulation, but access of data in different ways to the access that we have today. Do you see any sort of boundaries that we might be crossing on ethics and the role of companies like yours to keep that ethical line, how we use data professionally and purposefully for the greater good rather than perhaps for other outcomes?
Yeah, it's always a real grey area. Everyone's very worried about this sort of thing. When we think about like art, for example, that gets made by AI today, it's like, is it really fair that it's learned from all the hard work and all the hard labour of many artists over the years to be able to produce something very, very similar that people will then happily just use instead of paying an actual artist and, really caring about the human hand put to it. And I think in a sense, it's almost, although not the same style of concern, there is a similar concern around the use of data as well. Is obviously to AI, it's all just numbers, it's all just data. But what it then produces as an outcome or as a result or a recommendation might be horribly wrong. It's a great example when Microsoft put their, they had their AI kind of unleashed on Twitter to learn from the Twitter user base, for example, now called X, but we still call it Twitter. And it became like a racist Nazi inside a day or two because people were just feeding it stupid information. And obviously it was taking that and going, yeah, this is the way that I should be. And that is always the danger with AI, is it doesn't always have the guiding hand of a human behind it to go really morally what is wrong and what's right. And that in itself is a very hard grey line, right? Because everyone's got different moral lines, I guess, and things that they think are wrong or are right. There are definitely things that we all agree are wrong, of course. But I feel without that human intervention, that human guiding hand to really assess the outcome of what AI is giving to you, that's where it becomes dangerous. And this is why I think AI will never truly replace people. It's a people augmenter. It's not a people replacer because you will still need a human at the end to say, right, that is the right action for us to take. Go ahead and do it. Or no, stop, don't do that. That is the wrong thing to go for.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that that extra 10 people that you don't have to employ, so I can get my job done more efficiently and I can truly multitask, because humans don't actually multitask. We do several things badly at the one time. So we will be able to multitask by having that little bot next to us. Interestingly, I've got a couple of clients and they utilize automation quite heavily throughout their recruitment cycle, and a number of my clients have actually named that a human name, right? So and it's on their org chart as somebody, as opposed to just part of the technical ecosystem. One of them calls it Dave. I'm not sure if that's a hat tip to a certain movie, but there's another one that was going to call it Hal, but they thought that might have dispersions throughout the organisation negatively. So I think I think you're right. I think there's always going to be that intervention point. I saw a really funny job ad once, and it was basically a unplugger was the role title, and their job was just to sit by the machine and get ready to unplug it in case there was an event that the AI bots were taking over the world, right? So I don't know if we'll need to get to that stage. I think the machines, if they do go down that pathway, will be a few steps ahead of us, I reckon. But I think to your point, as long as there's some good avenues that have got some boundaries there, and that is set by the organisation, so it's probably more increasingly important to have, a team or, at least a couple of people within the organisation with a good perspective around how you want to utilise this technology set, effectively and also professionally.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. And that leads me to something else as well, Derry. So looking forward, where do you see the biggest growth opportunities for gamification and recruitment tech? It's a big question, isn't it?
It is a very big question. Yeah, I've got lots of thoughts on the reporting side, but the gamification one's a really interesting one. I think really where you're going to find gamification massively accelerating, at least internally to a recruitment agency or to a sales team or whatever you want to call it, is going to be the use of this data that AI will be able to assemble. I kind of mentioned it earlier on around the whole reporting in very human language would be very easy. That also will then make collection of advanced data quite easy, which could then feed into gamification very, very quickly. Whereas I think today, because gamification is, I wouldn't say it's like high on most people's priority list of things to develop at tech companies, for example, it can be quite primitive in some ways. Whereas I think in future, if you're able to look around and say, you know, very specifically, I want to isolate the number of jobs that we've sourced from this given customer that then go on within 30 days to become a placement and then therefore this much in revenue. Those are the kind of things that today you can't tie very comfortably into a competition, for example, or into driving the right kind of behaviors. Nor when you are able to do it, the most really pause and think, is this actually the right behavior for us to be guiding? And that's where I think this intersection of AI with gamification will become really, really powerful, because it will have the ability to tell you, here's the metric that you should be using, and I'm able to get that for you. And here's why that's really important, because it will drive this kind of behavior in people. Whereas I think the problem with a lot of, and this is going into a whole new realm of like commission here, for example, and how we incentivize behaviors. But I think a lot of people will drop a commission scheme into a team and just go, cool, it's a commission scheme, it works, people get paid, without really considering the behaviors that it actually drives. Whereas I think AI, at least in the long term, could be a really good guide for that. So that AI and gamification crossover, that'll be really powerful in the future.
Yeah, super interesting. And I think what I love about all this sort of stuff too is it's not just there for the big companies. You know, this sort of stuff's accessible to the smaller businesses as well. They just need to know how to use it. It's interesting how many of my guys, because I coach people that 1 to 10 bracket owners in that space. And it's amazing how infrequently you hear the word data. But they've got so much opportunity now with these tools to really leverage what they have got, because often they're sitting on a whole lot of data that they just don't realize that they've got, and they're certainly not utilizing. So I think these tools, if they embrace them, are really going to help that.
And I think a lot of that really is going to come from, you know, a lot of the players in the rec tech space being able to open up access to that data. Like one thing I've always said is that your CRM is a gold mine for data. Like if it's tracking every interaction you're having with every client, with every candidate, all the placements that you're doing, the response to CVs that you're sending out by tracking the emails coming back from customers, for example, that is a literal gold mine, but it can be so difficult to get out because people really want to protect the data that they've collected, these CRM providers. If that stuff gets opened up and AI has its chance to really run across that data, and thankfully a lot of CRM providers are starting to look at integrating AI more and more, the insights that you can get from that will be truly endless. You won't have to sit there and crawl through spreadsheets for weeks on end. That's going to be a really exciting time, I think, when you see these insights start to get uncovered without you barely having to lift a finger.
Yeah, that's super exciting.
Yeah, I was just pondering the life of a recruiter in, say, 2030. Let's look at that. You know, it's not far away really in the scheme of things, but from a tech perspective, if we think of what's happened over the last, call it 18 months, there's lots of opportunity there to have some quantum leap between what a recruiter is doing today and what they will be doing in the year 2030. So, Derry, with that in mind, what do you forecast the life of a recruiter utilising, you know, bleeding edge technology that you guys could provide at that stage with the overlap of AI and, you know, beautiful data sets to provide reporting, you know, a bit of a nudge on how I can expedite my time at work and then delivering some really great outcomes for candidates and clients?
Yeah, I think I'll come back to the thing that everyone was saying when, and it sounds really easy and cliche to go back to it, but when AI was first becoming a thing, you had kind of a big group of people that were saying ultimately humans will never be replaced because people want to deal with people. And again, horrifically cliche, but I still think the best recruiters that you'll find are the ones who just know how to work with people, the ones that can build relationships, can build trust, can build camaraderie, and ultimately win the trust of their clients. And so the biggest thing I think that recruiters can really invest in today is in those people skills, right? If you really don't love working with people and speaking to people on a regular basis, this probably is not going to be the job for you long term, because AI will automate away all the other stuff. It will make sending emails to customers far easier. It will make reminding you to follow up with certain people off the back of a meeting way easier. It will compile down all of your meeting notes, which means the main thing you have to focus on with all that brain space that you've got, because you aren't having to worry about admin as much, is going to be the actual delivery of the service and building that human relationship. So I really think that's going to be the shining factor. Those that deal with people best, they will be, as they are today, really, they're still the winners today, but they will be so far clear, I think, in the future, especially if they know how to use AI to their advantage as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
think
something
you're
to
right.
be mindful of, because I think a lot of people are starting to think, tech and automation is going to do my job for me. But I am totally in step with you there, Derry. I think we need to be not forgetting this is first and foremost about people. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It'll do
people
the
first is
menial
always
and
a good
boring
policy.
parts, but it will not do the part
Yes.
that's the most impactful on your outcome, I think. That's on
Yeah,
you.
that's exciting, isn't it? Because there's a lot of those menial bits that we'd like to get rid of. Yeah, I mean, I speak to, when I'm speaking to agency owners, they're so stuck in the weeds and doing things that, they just don't need to be doing, that are increasingly being taken over, or being able to be taken over by some sort of tech or automation. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's going to be the role of leaders to maybe let go a little bit more and trust in the machine as well, because a lot of entrepreneurs do get stuck in the weeds, as you said, BK, around doing your zero account, sending out invoices, following up, all that kind of stuff. Whereas, let's face it, machines are designed to do those repetitive tasks really, really, really well, right? Much better than what a human can do. So just put that process and system in. And I think, there's going to be a lot of responsibility sits on the shoulders of, those software development companies to provide those services. And a lot of my clients are asking, Andrew, should I be utilizing, XYZ AI module on top of my CRM? And our firm recommendation is just give it 6 months, keep an eye on the market, but your recruitment provider should be having that released this year, 2024. Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is the year that they will be releasing these Copilot-esque type products and leverage the hell out of it once it's within the platform.
It's going to be an exciting year for sure.
One less thing to juggle.
So before we close today's session, Derry, can you give our audience your elevator pitch about why they should get in contact with OneUp, what it can do for you, who your ideal client is, that sort of thing? Let's hear about it.
Yeah, I think it'd be really easy to sit here and say, look at all these cool things we do, but really there are probably 3 things that you should think about. And if so, there are reasons why you should reach out to us. Number 1 is you're finding right now during what has been a tough market for the last year or so, motivation isn't quite where you want it to be inside of the team. Maybe energy isn't quite up there. Maybe you've had to make some tough calls over the last few months and you really want to find a way to inject a little bit of life back into the team. That's reason 1 why people tend to reach out to us. Reason 2 is they are finding themselves locked up in spreadsheets, or their CRM is just really mind-numbingly frustrating when it comes to trying to get insights or data out about what's going on inside of the team, especially in a world where hybrid work is now so prevalent. I think we had 76% of our customers are now hybrid workforces. For companies that are really keen to keep tabs on what's happening across the organization, they tend to reach out to us when it's impossible to bring data in from CRM, the calling solution, to then track that against targets or in teams across the organization. If reporting's a headache, that tends to be reason 2. And when it comes down to reason 3, it comes down to something you guys have mentioned a couple of times, automation. If you're finding a lot of things are just becoming quite manual and repetitive, you're having to pull the same reports together all the time, you're having to email them out to the same people every other day of the week, for example, so they can do their jobs. We can help with a lot of that stuff as well. We help you automate reports out across your team as and when you need. So really, if it's down to motivation, it's down to reporting or down to automation, any problems in those 3 areas, that's when people tend to reach out to us. It's a good time to do so if that's on your mind right now.
Cool. And what size businesses, Derry? Is it across the board?
We tend to go across the board. Our average size is about 20 heads or so. We work with anything from 5 up to 500 though.
Amazing. Yeah, great. Okay, so we're helping the little guys out as well. Love that. So, all right. Well, as we wrap up today, it's been an enlightening conversation, and I want to extend a very heartfelt thank you to you, Derry, for joining us and sharing the innovative journey of OneUp Sales. I know it's very late for you there today, so we appreciate that.
No worries.
So your insights into gamification, really cool, and the future of recruitment. So they're not just fascinating, obviously now we're kind of still buzzing about it. They're absolutely essential for anyone looking to understand where the industry is headed. And that's what we're all about showing on this podcast, is where we're actually going with tech in recruitment. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, keep innovating and pushing those boundaries. And Derry, any last final words from you?
No, it's been good fun, even if again, 10:30 at night. I'm a night owl anyways. It's been great. So thank you guys for a really good conversation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. Thanks, Derry.